Alright, so this is a micro-teaching example, engaging engineering students in loops with MATLAB. Let's get started. Introduction to loops. Loops are a fundamental programming concept. They allow you to perform operations many millions of times faster than a human could.
Huh? Huh?
In MATLAB, there are two different types of loops. For loops, for when you know how many times you want to loop, and while loops, when you don't know how many times you want to loop. Why can't I just copy and paste the same code 200 times though? Well, you could do that for loops, but if you make a mistake, you now have to fix the same code 200 times. Is that something you want to do? Yeah, I thought so. Well, now that you're convinced, let's take a look at the syntax. While loops and for loops. Alright, let's take a look at the basic syntax. So, a while loop is composed of the keyword while, and then some sort of conditional statement, along with some code that you want to run multiple times, and then the end keyword. So when do you want to use it? Well, you'll want to use it when you know you want to run the code repeatedly, but you don't know how many times you'll actually do it. Or when you want to rerun the code for as long as the user wants to continue, for instance, until a figure window is closed, much like you would in a Windows or Mac PC. Or when you are searching data for something but you don't know where you'll find it. Alright, so we have a coding problem. We have to find the first orange in the apple barrel. Alright, let's say we have some sort of array that looks like this. Apple, 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 orange, apple. So, is it option A or is it option B? I'll give you some time to think about this. Alright, let's take a look at the two choices. So, A is correct, while B is incorrect. So, let's look at option A. So first, we'll pre-allocate a variable by saying I equals 1, and then use that variable to index out the first element in barrel to see if it's equal to apple. If it is, we'll say I equals I plus 1 to increment I. This will continue to work until barrel, or there's an element in barrel, that's equal to orange. Thus, at the end, when we say barrel I, it should spit out orange. Let's look at the second one. So, we still do the pre-allocation of I, but here we're doing a conditional statement on the entire array. This is a very common mistake that beginner programming students do, but this will always evaluate to false because this array will never equal the string apple. Thus, it will always spit out barrel of 1, which isn't very helpful. Alright, for loops. So, the basic syntax for loops is for some iteration variable, and then equals some array, and then some code that we want to run multiple times, and then of course the end keyword. So, when do I use a for loop? Well, when you know how many times you want to run a section of code, or when you're running code over every element in an array, or when you're searching through data, but we want to search through all of it and not just stop once we've reached some condition. All right, so this time we have to find all the oranges in the apple barrel. So let's say we have some array like this: apple, apple, orange, apple, orange, apple. So we need to find how many oranges there are. So is it option A or is it option B? I'll give you some time to think. All right, so option B was correct this time. Let's look at option A. So we're saying 4 fruits in the barrel. So basically, it'll take each index out of barrel and put it into fruit. We're going to set I equal to 0 and then see if that fruit is equal to orange and then add 1. Unfortunately, we have to remember that everything inside this for loop is going to be rerun every time. So we're going to reset I to 0 every time we run this loop, which is not very helpful. In B, we set I equal to 0 first before we enter the loop, and then we do fruit equals barrel, so we'll get every index of barrel out into fruit. Then we say if fruit is equal to orange, we'll add 1. By the end, we should have however many oranges that were in the barrel. All right, tips and tricks. All right, so you can use basically any array in MATLAB with for loops, not just vectors with numbers. So this is valid. This is valid. It'll just go through each element, so it'll do hello, and then my, and then name, and then is, and so on. Next, you can do matrices, but it will do the entire column each time instead of just every element. And that's also something that's true for every type of matrix in MATLAB, not just numbered ones. Also, the character array valid is also valid because MATLAB will essentially just go through each character in the character array. Breaks can also be used to exit any loop. So if we do something like make a random vector that's 1e to the power of 10 long, as long as we are having some conditional right here, like I is greater than 0.5, we can put a break here and we'll know that eventually, hopefully, as long as not all couple trillion of those numbers aren't less than 0.5, then we can break. Likewise, a continue can be used to control where you loop. So, if we set a distance equal to 0 and then say while distance is less than 100, we can add 1 to distance, and then we can check to see if distance is greater than 5 to continue. If it's not, we'll hit do display, are we there yet? So essentially this will run are you there yet 5 times until someone gets annoyed and says, well, I'm just going to add a continue so it doesn't always spit out are we there yet. Loops can also be nested. So this is a fun example. If we set spider size equal to 12 inches, we can do a while loop and say while spider size is greater than 0, while spider size is greater than 5, while spider size is greater than 10. So we're going to be stuck in this loop until spider size is greater than 10. We're going to display and then we're going to subtract 1 from spider size because we're running away. After 2 iterations, this will break out and go to this, in which case we'll display and also decrease spider size by 1 until spider size is less than 5. Now once we're here, we're going to say still not far enough, and we're going to keep running until spider size is less than 0. All right, so that was a micro teaching example. Thank you.